Okay, so today we're going to talk about ergonomics, but a little housekeeping stuff. There's been a lot of questions. Number one, we don't have flu shots yet. I don't know when we're getting them. Number two, the don't sit, be fit. Jeannie's working on getting a place for you to upload your forms to that. I don't know if it'll be, we'll work out the deadline thing we were just talking about. Number three, you have to submit a form when you go in to do this lunch and learn. You just got to upload some piece of paper saying that you came. Even though you checked in, you still have to do that. We good?
Simply well.
Simply well. Mm-hmm. But we'll talk about it. Okay. All right, so I'm Tiffany, and today we're going to talk about ergonomics in the workplace. Employee health nurse, OC health nurse, employee health coordinator. I'll go by any of those titles. So most of you know who I am. So the reason we're talking about ergonomics is that OSHA reports that office workers and healthcare workers report musculoskeletal disorders, tons of them every year. And not only are these a problem for the worker, but it causes severe pain, keeps people off work, pain and suffering, and a host of other different issues. So this is why we're talking about it. We're going to talk today about the actual definition of ergonomics and MSDs, that's musculoskeletal disorders, and identify some risk factors, talk about symptoms and ways that you can adjust your workstation to reduce the risk, and also how you can perform tasks safely to reduce your risk. So basically, what is ergonomics? It's fitting the job to the worker. This is new. It used to be in the old days. I'm not really sure when the old days was, but in the old days, they would hire taller people to work manufacturing lines. They were taller, longer arms. So they were fitting, those people would work the lines a lot better. So now what we try to do is we try to change the line and change the people that are working. So we try to fit the job to the worker. And the reason this is important is we want to reduce injuries and illness. And we use engineering and administrative controls in order to do that. So engineering controls would be adjusting your workstation and your work environment. Administrative controls would be things like changing how you do your task, when you do your task, timing of how you do your job. We have three different factors that are important to the worker. We have the tools that you use to do your job, the tasks that you actually have to do, your workstation, and your environment. So if any of those three things are out of whack, that's when we increase our risk of having musculoskeletal disorders with the worker. So these are what MSDs are. They can affect your hands, wrists, forearms, shoulders, knees, hips, you name it. And we're talking about muscles, tendons, ligaments, joints, cartilage, blood vessels, and nerves. There are approximately 1.8 million MSDs that are work-related every single year. 600,000 of them cause the worker to be off work. Not only does this take the person away from work, but you also think about the lost productivity, absenteeism, just the expense of having these types of injuries. And not only is the person away from work, but the people that are left behind when they're at home have to do their work. So that'll be your coworkers that have to pick up the slack. So that's another reason we focus on this. There's different types of injuries. Repetitive motion injuries are the most common, 68%. Repetitive placing, grasping, or moving objects, that would be taking a box and moving it this way constantly all day long. Typing or key entry, and repetitive use of tools. So what are the different types of risk factors? Repetition, awkward postures, contact stress, force, and vibration. So repetition would be doing the exact same thing for an extended period of time, whether that's typing at a keyboard or, like I said, picking up a box, the same heavy box, and putting it on a table, continuing to do that. Or we have folks that work in sterile processing where they have to pick up the big trays and move them constantly all day long. That increases your risk of injury. Awkward postures. I imagine some of our surge techs having to hold a certain position for a long time. Or in contact stress, that would be maybe if you have to lean against a counter for a long period of time, or if you are resting your wrists on your wrist rest from your keyboard, that's contact stress and can cause injury. And force and vibration. Now this is usually something we see in construction. Thinking about So say there's someone who's having to screw something in, they're constantly having to do this and push force in order to do it. Vibration, thinking about someone on one of those, what are those little things? Jackhammer, yes. You know, I know so much about tools. So those are the different, but this can happen also in the healthcare setting if people are having to lift heavy files constantly. So some of the signs and symptoms are pain, obviously swelling in the joints, especially in the hands, wrists, neck, and lower back. Those are the most common areas that people are affected. Some of the different types of pain. So when people come to my office and they say they have an issue, these are the types of things that I hear them say. They feel some tightness or stiffness or soreness or burning, tingling, any of those things. So if you ever have these types of issues, if you've had this type of issue, you need to come and see me. All right? There are steps we can take to try to mitigate the risk and help to improve your workspace. Are there any outward signs? Sometimes that you will see people rubbing their hands, rubbing their joints. One thing that I know that I used to do is this. I do shake my hands a ton, or massaging my hands or cradling a part that might be injured or hurting. So what do you do if you experience these symptoms? You're going to come and see me immediately. We want to make sure we get to you before there's anything really severe going on with you. And with that, I will help you to work on your workspace or work on your tasks to make sure we improve how you're doing your job to reduce your risk of injury. So far, so good? So we're going to do a quick little quiz. True or false? There's a prize, so make sure you're engaged. True or false? Ergonomics reduces exposure to musculoskeletal disorder risk factors. True. Tim.
True.
Okay.
Worth my pride.
I was just kidding. MSDs affect only the wrist. True or false?
False.
False. What else can it affect? Hands, neck, shoulders, hips, knees, and toes. An example of an engineering control to prevent MSDs is alternating tasks. True or false?
False.
It's false because alternating tasks would be an administrative control. Engineering would be changing your environment. You gotta watch that one, she's smart. Report MSD symptoms only after you've seen a doctor. True or false?
False.
False. Yes, come see me immediately before we get that far. So let's talk about your workstations. So in recent times, I had a lot of requests about workstations. So let's identify some things that we can do. We don't always necessarily need, everybody doesn't need a stand-up desk. Everybody doesn't need a brand new chair. Everybody doesn't need a whole new workspace. That's not necessarily the case. There are some things that we can do to fix your workspace, to make it more comfortable. First thing you want to assess is your head and shoulders, facing forward when you're doing your work. There are a lot of people that I've seen actually at their keyboard and their monitor's there. So this is how they look. Can't do that for very long without causing some stress. Tilted head puts stress on your neck and shoulders, and I know I have a habit of doing that when I'm reading. I kind of turn my head this way. So I have to consciously think about doing that. Minimizing head rotation. Relax your shoulders. Who at the end of the day feels like this when they're at their desk in the computer? Shoulders hunched this way. Keeping your arms tucked in close to your body and no extended reaching. Now I know that there are some times when you have to reach for different items on your desk. That's all fine and good, but you don't want to have to do that for a long period of time. You want to keep everything within this range. Elbows and wrists, you want to keep your elbows relaxed and close to your body, not extended too far forward or too far backwards. Keep your wrist in line with your forearms, which can be difficult, but there are things we can do. Hands not flexed up or down. So if you are typing, you don't want to type in this motion or this one. Okay, you want to have your wrist flat. Your legs and your feet. So you want to keep your knees bent about 90 degrees. Now 90 degrees is just a general number. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's really about what's comfortable for you. But you want to make sure that your thighs are mostly parallel to the floor. You want to keep your chair at a comfortable height and keep obstructions, things that are underneath your feet, underneath your workstation. You want to remove those and keep your feet flat on the floor on a footrest. I know some of us are height challenged. and our feet don't reach the ground. I personally don't have that issue. But I know that that can be a problem, and we can get footrest for that. Your seat surface, make sure it's comfortable. I know some of us have jobs where we're sitting a ton, and so it doesn't matter how cushioned the seat is, it's going to be uncomfortable regardless. We'll talk about what to do with that. Slightly wider than your hips or thighs. Make sure that it's the proper length. You can actually have contact stress injuries if the chair is hitting behind your knee here constantly. Adjusting the height of your chair to make sure your feet are flat on the ground, and adjusting the tilt. So some chairs lean back, some chairs that we have you can lean back or forward, and others you can't, bless you. And if you can't, use a pillow. You can use a pillow, you can use a towel to give yourself some lumbar support. The back and arms of the chair, make sure the backrest is adjustable, and that's where you can use the pillow. Make sure the armrests are keeping your elbows right at your side. And maybe moving the armrest up and down will also help. Your computer monitor. So one of the issues that I've had with my computer monitor is that being taller, I end up looking down if I have to move my monitor up and down to make sure that you're looking at the center or above. You want to be able to look 2 inches below the top of the screen and into the middle of the screen. You don't want to have to look above or below that. Keep it arm's length away. So when you're typing at your desk, you want to if you put your arm out, you should be able to touch your screen. And proper height, so the head is level, we talked about that. And use any documents that you're using, make sure you use a document holder, keep them close to your screen so you're not having to turn back and forth. Neutral keyboard position, this is showing here how her elbows, we want to keep them at 90 degrees, but it's not always possible. But the thing that you want to focus on is keeping your wrist flat so that you're not moving this way, but keeping your wrist flat. And keep your hands at an angle, not turned up or down. Oh, I didn't know this. This is difficult. This is going to take some strength training on my part. No wrist rest when you're typing. So when you're actually typing, you're not supposed to be resting your wrist on the wrist rest. You're supposed to use that when you're not typing. Did you know that? Yeah. Give that a try. Let me know how that works. Using a mouse. Control the mouse from the elbow. So when you are using your mouse, you want to make sure that you are moving this way instead of this way. Instead of using it this way, you want to move it this way. All right? Position the mouse properly. Switch the mouse to the other side if you feel stressed. So that takes a lot, right? Have you ever tried using the mouse with the opposite? It's a hot mess, is it not? But if you practice it and if you need to take a break, it could be like a competition for yourself. Using a laptop, there are some of our, I know our rehab staff, they use a laptop often. So if you have to, sacrifice your neck posture for your wrist posture. It's more important to keep your wrist flat than it is to, we want to focus on your wrist and not your neck so much, especially if it's just occasional. If you are a full-time user, you want to set up your laptop just like you would any workstation monitor and maybe use a different keyboard and mouse. So, break time doesn't really mean break time. So, mini breaks doesn't mean you're going to stop doing your job. It's just you're going to stop doing that part of your job and do something a little bit different. And that means if you're typing for 30 minutes and you need a quick break, that doesn't necessarily mean you take your focus off your work at that point, but you just take a quick break to stretch your fingers. Seconds, we're talking. Now, a rest break, that's a different story. That one you want to do at least once an hour for 1 or 2 minutes, and that means you actually stand up from your workstation, actually go get a drink, you actually do a stretch of some sort. Now, when you go back to your workstation and your boss comes over to you and says, "What are you doing?" do not say, "Tiffany told me to take a rest break," okay? Do not say it. You just take breaks when you need them, but make sure you get your job done, people, because I don't want to hear it. Okay. Eye breaks, that's when you just look away from your monitor every 15 minutes or so. Blink your eyes. She looks really happy, right? This next one's really good too. So some different exercises you can do are finger extensions, stretching your wrists up and down, shrugging your shoulders. When you're doing that, you go backwards, you go forwards, and blade pinch. So you put your arms here. Yeah, he's hot, right? He's hot. What year do y'all think this was made? Check out those glasses. Anyway, and overhead reach. This is a good one too to stretch out your back. Nodding your head forwards and backwards and turning your head and tilting your head. Now all of these exercises you don't want to go to the extreme. This is just a stretch, just a stretch. Hands behind the head again, bending forward to stretch your low back. Knees to chest and a back bend. Again, this is not something that you want to hurt yourself. This is just to stretch. Give yourself a little break. This would have been really good for the don't sit, be fit something, right? Mm-hmm. Focus on your posture. So just in closing, just to review all of the things we've talked about, you want to keep your elbows at your side parallel to the floor. You want to keep your wrists neutral. Use good back support, however you have to do that. Pillows, towels, tennis balls, whatever you need. Keeping your feet flat on the floor. Does he have on shoes?
No.
And your head and neck facing forward and straight. Relax your shoulders. All right, so what is wrong with this picture? Can you imagine if you did this all day like this? I couldn't do it one time. Why is this one better? He's using his legs mostly. He looks really aggravated to take a picture. Besides that old monitor, what's wrong with this picture?
Resting his wrists.
He's resting his wrist. He's reaching. Right, and his arms are extended all the way out. His elbows aren't at 90. Didn't look and check out this alarm clock back here. How old is that? What's wrong with this picture? And the bad jewelry. What's wrong with it? His wrist, yes. What could he do to change that? Why is his keyboard on his lap? What could he do to change that? Keyboard tray, there you go. All right, so here's another quick quiz. While working on the computer, your elbows should be A, extended out, or B, close to body? B, yes. Computer monitor should be positioned A in front of you or B to one side? A. Yes, y'all are so bright. While you're typing, your wrist should be bent up or straight? Ooh, I'm glad y'all aren't missing these. Control the mouse with A, wrist movements or elbow movements? B, elbow movements, yes. All right, so just to go over a few of the things we talked about, make sure our workstations are set up correctly, our chairs are adjusted as much as possible. Think about how you're using your mouse. Tips for you, think about how to use your laptops and take your breaks and stretch when you can. Some key points to remember. Some office workers are at risk for musculoskeletal disorders as well as healthcare workers. MSDs are caused by stress and strain on your body while you work. And we use engineering and administrative controls to minimize the risk. And you can help by following safe work practices and reporting any symptoms you might be having. Any questions? No? All right. Well, thank you guys.
Well, thank you.